that first season he managed to avoid relegation, which was important for Kilmarnock at the time, and he also managed to beat Celtic and Rangers on the way to the Scottish Cup final. But it never started terribly well for him. On Christmas Day 1937 it was Kilmarnock that he brought to Celtic Park, and they lost by 9-1. And I think he would forgive us today if we were to get another Celtic 9 Kilmarnock 1 at Celtic Park. So thanks very much for having us. We look forward to seeing you throughout our 125th year celebrations at St Mary's on the 6th of November and at Celtic Park this afternoon. Thank you.
I was struggling to introduce some of our esteemed guests earlier. Again, I don't know how I can introduce John Kearney, wit, raconteur, artist, author, maybe author is the most appropriate, author of Heroes Are Forever, John Kearney.
I wondered why I didn't take off my cap earlier, in case you thought I was making a collection or something. But I want to pay tribute to the man, Jimmy McGrory. As Pat Woods will tell you, I'm no master of statistics. I know nothing about facts and figures. But in researching my book, I came to love Jimmy McGrory. And I realised that was the factor that bound him to the club. People loved Jimmy McGrory, the man. And it was that love that he recognised, because he was of the people. And he realised that the Celtic club was a people's club, paid for in pennies at the beginning, and made into this Leviathan organisation that spawned such executive teams. At time, it was made possible because people loved the idea of establishing themselves as a force, as a fact of life in Glasgow. That the Irish had come and the Irish were going to stay, and to hell with it. That's who we were, and that was acknowledged. And I want you to look at James McGrory now. Look at that man there. You hate it, but you look at him. That is McGrory now. He is still that man. There is a modest, unassuming, gentle man there. That man there is a good man. And that's what Jimmy McGrory was. Of course, he was a great player. You know more about that than I do. He was certainly not an actor. He was a man who played with his head, with 2 feet that were like engines, but more importantly, he played with his heart. And it was the heart that he played with, gave heart to the team, gave heart to the terracing. When we were stuck on the side there watching, the Toffs were in the stand, but we were on the terracing, shivering. I never saw him play. For me, Jimmy McGrory was a pipe and a soft hat standing in front of the old dreary old gate that Celtic had at the time. And I almost felt like genuflected every time I passed him. We knew he was a hero. How the children were brought up, the grandchildren, knowing that their relative was a legend, an icon, belongs to the pantheon of great Celt, and is not yet recognised on the wall. But I want to see at Celtic Park Jimmy McGrory's bulldog head, sorry James, coming out of the wall like a gargoyle, because Celtic Park is becoming a palace. It's also becoming a fortress, and behind that fortress is retained all the values that Celtic supporters had. Passion. Passion comes from the blood, and who cares if the blood was Irish? It was our blood. That's what McGrory told the supporters, and every violent shake of his head caused a goal. The courage he showed on the field, and the gentleness of the field. A gentle man who was a warrior in the sport he chose. He did nothing in his life but play football. And he thought he was the luckiest man in the world, that he was paid for his pastime. But he played, as I said, with his heart, and in our hearts we remember him now, and we thank him for the love he gave to Celtic, for the love Celtic gave back to me. I grew up watching the worst team we ever had. We celebrated when we got a corner, for heaven's sake. I would love to have seen McGrory play, but I'm proud to stand by his graveside today in the company of his family and acknowledge the passing of a great man who does Celtic, Glasgow and Scotland proud, James Edward McGrory.
Thank you, John. I'd now like to ask Jim Friel, representing St Roch's in the Garngad, Jimmy's home and Jimmy's first club. Jim.
Reverend Father, Celtic and St Roch's fans, it's a great honour and a great privilege for me to be here to say a few words on behalf of the supporters, the committee and the players of St Roch's Junior Football Club, and also the people of the Garngad, and I mean all the people, at this commemoration. Jimmy McGrory signed for St Roch's in April 1921 at the age of 17, and he made his debut in a Victory Cup semi-final against Codder United, a team that came from the old mining village of Mavis Valley along the canal banks near Bishopbriggs. And like many other mining communities, it's now gone, and the team sadly has gone too. It's no longer there. My mother's family knew the McGrory family well, because we lived in Rosemount Street beside the McGrory family. Jimmy's people came from the Thanet Peninsula in the northwest part of Donegal, which is known as the outer edge of Ulster, like the same place my own father came from. So they were all very close, it was a very close community. My mother's oldest brother, John Carraher, was St Roch's first captain and was in the side when Jimmy McGrory came into the team towards the end of that first season. The only occasion I had the privilege of meeting Jimmy was in late July 1959. I'll not tell you what age I was then. Uncle John was in Glasgow on holiday, and he took me along to meet Jimmy McGrory at Celtic Park, their beloved paradise. I was quite simply gobsmacked as they sat chatting away about their old days at St Roch's School and at Milburn Park, St Roch's first ground. And I also recall that day meeting one of my all-time heroes, the great Bertie Peacock, another person who, as well as being a great player, was a fine gentleman and a credit to our club. Jimmy won 2 cup winners' medals in that first season. The cup victories were a tremendous achievement for what was then Scotland's newest junior club. Founded in 1920 by a courtman, Father Edward Lawton, who was a parish priest at St Roch's in the Garngad. And the first manager, the first 8 years, was a Garngad man, Eddie McGill. They were the founders and the bedrock of St Roch's Junior Football Club. Codder United were beaten in that cup final, and in the Glasgow Consolation Cup, St Roch's beat Maryhill after a draw, and Jimmy McGrory scored in both games. It's often said that the Garngad was a great place for centre forwards, but I'm to add a wee note of discord here, because Jimmy could never get a game at centre forward for St Roch's. Indeed, he never played at centre till he arrived at Parkhead. Maybe he played for Clydebank, but certainly he's not recorded as playing at centre forward for St Roch's, because our regular centres were high-scoring players like Billy Barton and Willie McGonigal. Jimmy played in those days in the old inside right position. But it is true that the Garngad was a great place for centre forwards. In fact, 3 Scottish international centre forwards came from Garngad Hill, which is now Royston Hill. There was Jimmy, there was the legendary Lisbon Lion, Stevie Chalmers, and I'm cheating a wee bit because I'm talking about streets just off Garngad Hill. Stevie, it's great to see him with us today, another Garngad legend. And the third one was Jim Forrest, who was one of the highest all-time scorers for Rangers. Jim came from Garngad Hill too. Some years after that there was John Connor, who's already been mentioned, and his grandson and I think his son-in-law are with us today. Another man who as well as being a great footballer was a gentleman. John Connor was unlucky in that Jimmy was still in his prime when he came to Celtic. But he did, as has been remarked on, score. He was a high scorer for every team that he played for. He was the leading scorer. And that included Airdrie, Plymouth Argyle and Albion Rovers. In Jimmy's second season at St Roch's, which was the club's second season, he helped the club to an extraordinary achievement by winning the coveted Scottish Junior Cup, then as now the Blue Riband of Scottish football. And this year it was won by Shotts Bonaccord, and the manager was a Garngad man, Tony McAnally. So we were quite happy that although St Roch's weren't in the final, there was a Garngad touch there anyway. And congratulations to Shotts Bonaccord. But St Roch's beat the famous old Ayrshire side Cullinan Rangers in the final, and the game had to be played twice because the famous old Buffs put in a protest after we won the first game 2-1. The goals scored by Jimmy McGrory, inevitably, and Conhilly. Cullinan lodged a protest against an eligible player, and St Roch's played the second game under protest and won 2-1 again. And again the goals came from Jimmy McGrory and another Garngad Hill man, Johnny Rollo, who was only 16, the youngest player ever to have played in a Scottish Junior Cup final, and that might well still be the case today. And it's interesting to note that there was an Old Firm touch to the final. As well as being St Roch's and Cullinan Rangers, Jimmy McGrory signed for Celtic, of course, and Johnny Rollo signed for Rangers. But the medal that Jimmy won on that day was the proudest position he had, and he always said he would never part with the St Roch's Scottish Cup winning medal. Jack Hartness, a great friend of Jimmy, former Hearts and Scotland goalkeeping legend, said that the power of McGrory's headers were like most players' shots. Another well-loved Garngad man, Jimmy Carroll, and this story is quoted in John's book Heroes Are Forever. He told me that Jimmy had honed his heading skills in long games of long headers and wall headers at the closest around Garngad Hill. Like Jimmy, myself and many others, and there's some of them here today, first kicked a ball in the Brickfield, a piece of rough ground bounded by the tenements of Rosemount Street, Garngad Hill and Milburn Street. And that little park in our childhood fantasies could be Celtic Park or Hampden, with the tenement windows to us like football stands, looking on at the games that went on all day. But as well as being a local hero to generations of Garngad people, he was a genuine role model. I can honestly say I've never heard anyone say a bad word about Jimmy McGrory. We know about his career, as John has said, his caps, his 550 goals, including 8 in one game against Dunfermline, and don't forget his 26 goals for St Roch's. Certainly among the greatest centre forwards of all time. I'm reminded of a recent television documentary about the great legendary Hungarian footballer Ferenc Puskás. His Real Madrid friend and teammate Alfredo Di Stefano said, yes, he was a great player, but more importantly, he was a great man and a great human being. I think that epitaph would fit Jimmy McGrory.